Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. We are actually finished having discussed the ephod, this complicated garment, trying to discuss that and put that into writing. It's like the exercise you might have had in grade school where they ask you to describe tying a knot, tying a bow for your shoe, how difficult that is. Excuse me. But we are now on to another subject, which I'm going to share with you now. And this is what it's about. I'm going to show you. This is what we're looking at, the me'il. So let me see. There we go. This is the cloak. Look at that. Compared to the ephod, right? Pretty straightforward looking. But we're going to go into the description now. Moment. Sorry. Okay. Va'asita et me'il ha'ephod. Interesting. It's called the me'il ha'ephod, which is either a robe or a cloak. I like the cloak of the ephod. Klil tchelet, pure blue, right? This color blue that they had, which was sort of as you could see from the illustration, in a way, I think a greenish blue, like a sea green blue, something like that. Rashi, what klil tchelet, et me'il ha'ephod. So first of all, he discusses, why isn't it just called a me'il? Why is it called the me'il ha'ephod, the robe of the ephod? She'ephod, he explains, she'ephod nitan alav, because the ephod was placed upon it, l'chagura, as a belt or a girdle, right? And we can go quickly back and take a look at the illustration so you can see it more clearly. Let's see if we can find it down here. There we go. Do you see how it's tied around as a girdle? This, of course, right here. Sorry, you still don't see it. There we go. There's a better picture. So there's the me'il and the ephod wrapped around it. And the picture from the back. How it wraps around, and that's why it's called the me'il ha'ephod. Back into the text. So, klil tchelet, completely of tchelet. Kulo tchelet, meaning, so klil could mean, it sounds in a way, kalul means to include, has that kind of meaning, but it's not. I think his concern is that the word klil is a hard one to translate. So he gives us an easier word to use, kulot tchelet. It's all made of this tchelet colored fabric. She'ein min acher me'urav bo. The point is that there is no other, it's pure of this fabric. There is no other kind, right? Min here meaning kind or species or something like that, right? Mixed me'urav bo, mixed with it. So on to the next verse. V'haya fi rosho betocho. And the opening, the mouth, right, at its head, in its midst, in the middle, safa yeh lefiv saviv, a lip literally is what it means. There should be for its mouth around ma'aseh oreg, the work of a weaver, kafi tachara, similar to a coat of mail, yellow it shall have, lo yikareya, so that it not tear. And we'll take a look again at the illustration here. Give me a moment. Look here, get into this picture, and then go back into the me'il itself. Okay, so actually this might be a better picture for you to see. So here we go. This is what we're talking about here. It's not so clear how this is woven. Let's see if I can make it just a tad bigger for you. There we are. Okay, but that would be in the middle of it. And if you look here, again, let's try and make it a little bigger, right? So right in the middle of it, this is this P Tachara. Let's go back into the text again, and we'll take a look at the Rashi. V'haya pi rosho, right? And the opening, I'm going to call it here, because pe does mean mouth, but it also has this idea of an opening, and it's at its top. Pi hama'il begovho, the opening of this cloak is at its height. Hu petichat beit hatzavar. We're talking about the opening for the neck to go through. Betocho, in its midst, ketargomo, and so let's take a look at, looking to see where he's translated that. Betocho. So, legave. So again, it means in its midst, something like that, right? So in the middle of it. And he says, kafil legave, folded into it, or folded on it. Kaful letocho. So we saw how that opening had that seam to it, or that hem to it, excuse me. Liot los lesafa, so that it should be like a lip, literally safa. Kefilato, I believe that means doubling it up. Kaful, double. Or kaful meaning folded over. V'haya maaseh oreg, and this was done woven in v'lo b'machat, and not with a needle. So this reinforcement was done as part of the weaving of the garment, is how I'm understanding it. And then he says, kafi tahara, and he gives us another word for the word tahara, lamadnu. So we learned from this, because it's giving an example of something that's assuming that we know what they're talking about. I mean, the reason for giving that as the example and as the illustration must be, he says, so we can infer from this, shehashir yonim shalahem, that their coats of mail, pihem kaful letochan, that likewise that neck opening there was doubled up in them. Lo yikareya, it shall not be torn. Now you could see it as, as a resultant, right? That you do this so that it doesn't tear. But because this is Torah, we're looking at it in every which sense. So he says that this lo yikareya, so that it not be torn. It's a nifal, it's a passive form, okay? Kedei, so that shelo yikareya. So he says initially, it's in order that, kedei, so that it not tear. V'hakoro, and one who tears it. So we're deriving a mitzvah from this. One who tears it, over belav, has in fact done a negative commandment, they've contravened something. They've performed, it's a sin, in other words. It's understood now as a thou shalt not. So one who intentionally tears this particular part of the Kohen's garment has now contravened a negative commandment. Because we consider this one of the 365 negative commandments, the thou shalt nots in the Torah. And he then gives you other examples. Velo yizach hachoshen. So in another place it says, and so that the choshen, the breastplate, not move, right? So it's essentially, he's saying that someone who causes the choshen to move while it's on the high priest, right, has performed a negative commandment. They've performed a sin. Lo yasuru, it goes on to say, lo yasuru mimenu. it shall not be removed from it. Hane'emar b'badei ha'aron. Oh, sorry. Okay, Yizach comma. V'chein, and likewise, a third example, lo yasuru mimenu, they shall not move from it, they shall not be removed from it, hane'emar bebadei ha'aron, which is mentioned regarding the staves of the ark, right? It mentions regarding those staves that they should not be removed. So again, one who removes them is violating a commandment. So on with another one, back here. Va'asita al, and you shall make on shulav, on its hem, rimune, or its hems. You saw that it's like two sides of it, right? Rimone tchelet. Literally, it means pomegranates. Rimon is a word for pomegranate of this tchelet material. Va'argaman, and purple. V'tolat shani, and crimson yarns. And we've had this before back in Parsha Truma, where we were discussing the fabric that was covering the tabernacle, and they mentioned tchelet, argaman, v'tolat shani. These three fabrics interwoven al shulav saviv, on its hem all around, ufa amunei zahav, and bells of gold betocham, amongst them, in their midst, saviv, all around. So let me give you the illustration, and then we can take a look at the Rashi. Here we go. I'm going to enlarge the picture. This is what we're talking about. And if you look very, very carefully, right, here's the bells, and here's the pomegranate, right, that tassel. So the bells and the pomegranate on the fringe of the robe. You can see how it comes down. It's open on these sides. And again, we can take a quick look and see how he wore it. And there are those bells and pomegranates on the bottom there.
Rabbi, what was the purpose of the bells and the pomegranate?
Hold your horses, and we will find out. If it's not in the text itself, I will certainly tell you. But I believe it's going to tell you. Okay. Let's do the Rashi quickly. Rimone, right? These pomegranates. Igulim v'chalulim, they were spherical and hollow. Hayu, they were. Kamin rimonim, like the pomegranates, ha'asuyim that they make, keveitzat tarnagolet, that are like the egg of a chicken, right? So they're hollowed out like that. Upa monei zahav, and when it talks about bells of gold, zagin, that would be the bell in balin, with their clappers, shebetocham, in them. So they were going to make a sound. Betocham saviv, and among them all around. And so he says, Beinehem saviv. In other words, in between each pomegranate. Bein shnei rimonim, in other words, between two pomegranates, pa'amon echad, one bell, davuk, stuck to v'talui, and suspended v'shulei ha'ma'il, on the hem of the robe. So let's keep going. We've got a couple more verses, Harlan, before we actually, let's see. All right, just this verse 34. Pa'amon zahav v'rimon, a gold bell and a pomegranate. Pa'amon zahav v'rimon, a gold bell and a pomegranate. Al shulei ha'ma'il saviv, all around the hem of the cloak. V'haya al ahar, I don't know that there's a Rashi on it. Yeah, here we go. Pa'amon zahav, it does a very simple, very moment, etc. He says, Pa'amon zahav, very mon itzlor. The point about it is that the bells aren't on one side and the pomegranates on the other side. It's trying to be absolutely clear that it's a pomegranate with a gold bell and then a pomegranate right next to it, that they're interspersed like that. So, and it shall be al Aharon l'sharet, and it shall be upon Aaron to serve, v'nishma kolo, so that his sound is heard, b'vo'o el hakodesh, when he comes into the sanctuary, lifnei Adonai, before Hashem, uveitzei to, and when he goes out of the sanctuary, v'lo yamut, so that he does not die. So he doesn't die. Interesting, right? That his entrance and his exit should be quite clear. No, by the way, there's it's an interesting concept, but let's take a look at the Rashi. We'll see what it says there. Here we go. V'lo yamut, so that he does not die. And here we come to an important principle. Miklal lav ata shomea in. From a negative statement, you can infer the positive statement. In other words, if it's saying so that he doesn't die, that he wear this so that he doesn't die, well, if he doesn't wear them when he does this, what's going to happen? Im lo, okay. If they are on him, lo yitchayev mita, he will not be deserving of death. Ha im yikanes mechusar echad min habagadim halalu, if he were to enter without one of these, missing one of these garments, chayav mita bidei shamayim, he will be deserving of death at the hands of heaven. Meaning, it's not up to any earthly court to take care of this case. This is something that would be a divine punishment. But the whole idea of him, and it's certainly mentioned regarding these particular garments, this garment, that when he go in, he be dressed appropriately. This is the way you deal with royalty. We know that clothing, of course, is a nonverbal form of communication. It's a very powerful nonverbal form of communication, but also the idea that when he goes in, he makes a sound, and there's nothing surreptitious about his going in. Yeah, Lauren.
I looked up pomegranate symbolism.
Yes.
And it talks, of course, about like fertility, but it also talks about righteousness, and it's also a traditional interpretation that it has 613 seeds.
Right.
So
yes.
It's kind of like about eternity and righteousness, and the connection of those two is what I'm getting.
Yes, right. In other words, that you should be as full of mitzvahs as a pomegranate is of seeds.
And since pomegranates deal with abundance and fertility, that it means that you will have that you will have, with these 613 mitzvahs, that you will have eternity.
Yeah. I mean, that is part of a thought, is that we earn eternal life. That God gives us that ability and that dignity to earn, and not just take it as a gimme. I mean, there is grace involved, there's no doubt about that, and mercy, but the fact is it's still up to us. We have that ability, that privilege.
Well, certainly grace could include the ability to earn. That doesn't have to be a gift that we can earn. That's in itself, the fact that we have to participate doesn't mean that it's not a gift.
True. I mean, I think of grace as undeserved love, right? That's what's beautiful about grace.
But what I'm saying, the undeserved love is there, but that doesn't mean we don't have to earn eternity, in a sense that we are given the chance to earn eternity because of the undeserved love.
I agree. That is the point I was trying to make. Exactly, Lauren. I was trying to make that point, that we don't just depend on grace. But I really like the point you made when you said that in some ways the fact that we have that ability is an act of grace. At least I was understanding you that way. So I thought that was pretty cool too. And I didn't make that point, and you did. So thank you. Okay. I was trying to, oh yes. So there's a general, I would say, mitzvah of not surprising people with your presence. In other words, that when you see a door closed, you knock. You give people some warning that you're about to come in. And that surprising people with your presence is akin to what we're talking about here. That going, and that's why those bells were there, because every time he'd take a step, these bells would tinkle. And so he was heard. And again, just to underline and underscore that idea, that if somebody, if there's a door that's closed, especially like a bedroom or something like that, but regardless, this notion of surprising people with your presence is considered something not very nice. And of course, in this context, not very nice, to put it mildly. So this is, I can take a little bit more. We do have a little bit more time, so we can go into this. And the next item, Va'asita tzitz zahav tahor, and you shall make this. In this, of course, we usually translate the word tzitz as a fringe, okay, a gold fringe of pure gold, zahav tahor. Ufi tachta alav, and you shall engrave upon it hituche chotam, the engraving of, I believe, a stylus, something like that. And what you should do is, what would be engraved on it is Kodesh Lashem, holy unto the Lord. So let me get the illustration for you. One moment. And sorry, here we are. This is helpful. Let's see if I can get it to work. Here it is. This is what we're talking about. This. So this is Kodesh Lashem. What's interesting is that this, I don't know that that's the actual script that they used, but this is the idea of it. So let's go back and see what Rashi has to say. So he explains in this case, and this is from Tractate Sukkah, Kemin tas shel zahav. In other words, it was like a thin plate of gold, haya, and this it was, rochav shnei etzbaot, its width was 2 fingers wide. So in other words, about a little bit over an inch, like about 1.5 inches, right? Makif, and it curved around, it circled around hametzach, around the forehead, me'ozen le'ozen, from one ear to the next ear. We can do just a little bit more. V'samta oto al ptil tchelet, and you shall place it on a ribbon of tchelet, of blue. V'haya al hamitznefet, and it shall be upon the mitznefet, was that headdress, right? That turban, that unique turban that the high priest wore. El mul pnei hamitznefet yiyeh, it shall face the surface of that mitznefet, of that hat, that turban. So let's see. This is quite a long Rashi here. So I'm going to stop. I think I'm going to stop here with the Rashi, and please God, tomorrow we'll get this done. We'll do this. So let me pop this here. Mark the place. And I'm going to stop the share. And here we are. So any last comments before I stop the recording? No. Okay.